test, 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 testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. What is that?
He wants you to say
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did you hear it?
yeah.
Are you good?
Yeah. There's no delay.
Okay. Howdy. He just waved from the back. He's like, fajitas. Yep. I'm so glad to see all of you here today. This is the last of our lunch series for the academic year. And I think that it's a great turnout for the last one. We're really glad to have you. My name is Wendy Clayton. I'm with Instructional Technology Services, and we are here to explore Zoom and hear a little bit more about the Assistant Provost for Academic Innovation in the office and their goals for the next year. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jocelyn Widmer. If you haven't already, you have postcards in front of you to join our Zoom meeting today. And then I think Dr. Widmer is going to go through that as well. But if you have any help, if we can, ITSers, can you raise your hand? If you have questions, we're here to help. So we'll be roaming around the room, flag us down, throw a tortilla at us. There's sound. There is sound. Oh, that's a very good point. If you have joined via your mobile device or your computer, can you mute your sound so that there's not a lot of extra audio feed? Okay, Dr. Widmer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here, and the room is packed, which makes me a little nervous as we test out technology, but we'll see how it goes. I just wanted to start by giving you a quick introduction to my first online experience. It was actually, yeah, I was going to say.
So can you mute your speakers as well? There's a lot of feedback. In the bottom right-hand corner of your app, there's a button that you can disconnect audio. Maybe try that again.
Thank you. Yes, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get through this with that echo. So my online experience actually started at Texas A&M when I was a graduate student in the fall of 2004. I took unbeknownst to me, my first online class. It was more of a flipped class. And my professor had a grading scale of 3 categories. It was check, no clue, and absurd. And about halfway through the semester, it was a cohort style, and we were all getting absurds back on our papers. And we realized about 2 in the morning one morning in Langford, our professor's voice came through some speakers on a laptop, and it was like, that was the moment we realized we were actually supposed to be watching the lectures online before we came to class. So that was my first online experience. Fortunately, the technology's gotten a lot better in the last several years, and so have the strategies for engagement. I can't say my landscape construction skills have gotten any better after realizing that, but it's really exciting to launch Zoom at Texas A&M, and I'm going to take you through some of my experiences of using the technology and hopefully impart some tips and tricks, and then we'll test it out. And in full disclosure, we're going to test it out in a slightly smaller environment than what everybody's joined in on now, just to make sure it works. And then I'll join in the larger meeting so we can see a Zoom meeting at full force with 100+ people in it. This is my first time to host a meeting that is that large. And then the hope is that we'll break up into smaller groups and test it out. And we've got amazing staff from ITS, from Provost IT, probably Division of IT and other groups that I'm not seeing who can troubleshoot as we wrap up the session. So to start, just to make sure everybody knows, because I have heard as recently as this morning, like, has Zoom officially launched? Yes, it has. We launched Zoom on April 16th, so a couple of weeks ago at Texas A&M, and we're really excited. It's been an overwhelming success in terms of participation, engagement, usage, great questions that we've gotten. Who's signed on to Zoom? Wonderful. That's great. And those of you who have not, by the end of the session, right? Yes. All right, so a few quick notes on, where's that coming from? A few quick statistics on where we are with the launch. The first day, April 16th, we had 361 new Zoom users by the end of the day. 42 Zoom meetings were held, and 487 total Zoom users at Texas A&M. So we saw a tremendous growth in the first day, which was really exciting. And this all was made possible, or couldn't have been made possible, without the generous support of the Division of IT, Provost IT, and also the Provost Office Communications Group, who was instrumental in designing the splash page. So I want to make sure that all of the groups who participated in the launch have the light shined on them, because this definitely wouldn't have been successful without them all. So this is just a quick screenshot of some of the statistics that came from the last week. And what I want to point out is that Zoom is a video-first solution, so it was designed for video. So what does that tell us about this graph? What should be happening with those green bars? They should be going up, right? So this is my first plug of many for the day to encourage you to use a webcam when you're connecting with Zoom, because it really augments the user experience. When we start engaging students on the other side, that's so important to make those connections. So I try to do it. I've had a couple of Zoom meetings, and reluctantly, by the end of the call, everybody's on a webcam, I think. So you can shame people into joining. And I also want to point out the share feature. So that's share screen, which I'll point out. So we've got pretty good usage in terms of sharing screen. And we have our #1 Zoom user over the last couple of weeks in the audience today. So I want to go ahead and recognize her. Chris Winchy is the #1 Zoom user by like 2 times. I'm not sure what you're doing. So, Chris, we have a gift for you for that. Are any of the other individuals on the list in the room? No. All right. Well, if you know one of these individuals, congratulate them, because this is wonderful. I'm just going to take it back one slide and point out again, this was ITS, an individual, Robert, who works for ITS. This was his personal Instagram page, day 1 of the launch. So ITS is all equipped with webcams. They arrived the day that we launched Zoom, so I was really proud to see this on Instagram. So why the 77,000 licenses of Zoom? For me, it was really important that we put Zoom in the hands of all users on campus, especially students. I think you probably have all had experiences where you've seen students really drive and push the adoption of the technology. So this is something that I've seen myself. I'm pushed very frequently by my students in my classes on how to use the technology, how to improve my usage of the technology so that I'm better engaging them. So I would encourage you to point out that this is available. We've had 3 separate email campaigns go out, and I've heard a number of people didn't get these. So we will be distributing these to representation on the DE Coordination Committee on Monday, which is a group that's supposed to be representative of most groups on campus. But if for some reason you know that you didn't get the email announcing the launch of Zoom, let me know or someone in ITS so we can get that out to you. But the student email, we especially would encourage you to push out, because it's got features unique to how students can use Zoom between and among themselves, which will really push the campus's adoption of Zoom. So a little bit about me and my background. I think it's helpful going along the theme of putting technology in the hands of individuals. Most of my research over the last decade has been in resource challenge contexts around the world, using technology as an engagement platform to look at health outcomes related to the built-in natural environment. So I spent a lot of time working in Haiti, which before the earthquake, there were an average of 3.2 people per SIM card, so the earthquake in 2010. Since then, if you're driving around the streets of Port-au-Prince, you often see people with 4 or 5 cell phones in their hands, because now there's market competition. Same in the Dominican Republic. There's wider spread adoption of the technologies there. I've been working more with students to train youth and build capacity so the data collection happens on the ground and by the individuals who live in communities. And then on the far right, I have a couple of images that I've taken through consulting work. The top one is in Georgetown, Guyana, and this is a Zoom room, which we'll be announcing the launch of Zoom rooms. Maybe Kyle can talk a little bit about that at the end of this session. And then the recipient end of what a Zoom room would look like. So this is Georgetown, Guyana, where the population is about 750,000, and the idea is that the education that's happening in Georgetown is hopefully going to reach some of the hinterland, which are really, really challenging contexts in which to teach in. So it's delivered, and in real time, it's piped into very rural communities along the Guyanese border with Venezuela and Brazil. And this is what that looks like. So then translating into the classroom, this is a group of my students using Zoom on the 5th of July. So no one wanted to be in class. I wanted to be in Texas with my family. So I said we'd hold class through Zoom. And I said the only way I would count participation was a short 6-week class, so there wasn't much time to miss a session. I said the only way I'll count their participation or attendance in class that day is if they use their webcam. So I had 40 students, smiling faces, except for Kevin up there at the top, who was walking around an airport and couldn't figure it out. So this gives you a sense of how dynamic and quick and on the fly. So this was an in-class course that I just quickly modified for a day so that everybody could travel and have kind of their own schedule. A lot of text here, but this was some of the feedback that I solicited. I was a little worried I was going to get in trouble for holding my class online when it was scheduled to be in a classroom. So I was like, well, put a survey together to collect some data and show that it was really useful. And for extra credit, you can get students to pretty much do anything, as you all know. So just a couple of things to point out. I'm going to showcase the breakout room feature in just a moment. That was something that the students really enjoyed, and in a lot of ways enjoyed it more working in groups. They enjoyed working in groups more online than they do in person. So this is something to think about in your campus classes as well. I had a couple students talk about how typically they must have had an experience that was more asynchronous in an online learning environment, so they liked the real-time synchronicity that was occurring through Zoom. They also liked that the content was right there in their face, so they could really focus on it, and they weren't distracted by whatever else was going on around them. Let's see. It was just easier to break into rooms. They didn't have to rearrange desks. That didn't take time. That's often a loud and time-consuming activity in a classroom. And then I just want to point out I think we often assume about students is that they're more tech savvy than we are, but with this adoption, especially with the new technology like Zoom, as we move into the migration of a new LMS, I think we should stop and think about that this is a give and take, and they're having challenges with the technology too. So I got this pretty frequently. They enjoyed how easy it was. They were worried about it. So we often think students are just, can seamlessly move among platforms, but this is just my caution that they do have their own hesitations like we do as faculty as well. And then of course, the comical allowed one individual to make a sandwich while we had class, so the flexibility. And then this is a screen. I take a lot of screen captures, so I'll often be showing these. But this is just to give you a sense. This is more of a capstone environment for graduate students. And what I wanted to point out is the woman in the far left-hand corner at the bottom, this was a session at night. These are all online students, and we connected synchronously about once a month to go through the capstone experience. And you can see she's got her little child with her, so it's flexible. The child was quite engaged by it, but this is more of the reality of the online student profile, as those of you who teach online certainly know. But what's also, I should have probably pointed out visually, is there's a good mix of faculty and students here, so it's about 50-50. So this is more engagement with faculty than students got in the department who took class, more engagement with the faculty than those who are taking in-residence courses. And then, of course, you can start to see how there is a lack of engagement when you're calling in and everybody else has their video. So again, shaming those into using their video. So I've talked mostly about the Zoom use case in teaching. To some extent, I've talked about it in advising, the importance of putting the technology in the student's hand. They're hopefully going to start to see the peer-to-peer impacts of this. When the communication went out a couple of weeks ago, there was we talked up quite a bit the concept of online office hours. So that's something I hope you'll take advantage of. But then also, which was probably mostly how Zoom was used before the full university-wide adoption, was in research and the potential for collaboration. It works particularly well in low bandwidth settings. So this is all about how we integrate the technology into teaching, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it is a really robust tool to foster research collaborations. And then lastly, because I know everybody has this on the tip of their tongue, this is just to say that Zoom will plug into all 3 of the LMSs that are under consideration. And if you go to zoom.us and search integrations, you can see the broad swath of tools that plug into, or that Zoom integrates with. So I would encourage you to look at that. We've got, it integrates fairly seamlessly with Outlook Calendar, so that's one that doesn't take a lot of extra work, but there's some nice integrations with Microsoft and others. Okay, now let's talk about the anatomy of Zoom meeting, because this can be somewhat intimidating when you go to set up your first meeting. And these are just my tips and tricks. I think you learn as you go. You can't get this wrong. So keep trying if you do something that you don't like the way it sets up in terms of the meeting. So the default is under topic, it's your name, and it's Zoom meeting. When you start to schedule quite a few of these and you forget what you're doing, it's best if you can remember to rename that every time you set it up, because that's going to just keep you on track. So I recommend renaming the meeting. It'll also help if you're sending these out to students and they're getting them from multiple faculty. It'll just help them, I think, stay on track. I would encourage you, again, to turn on video when you host, and also for participants, because this will make the video come on as a default. Make sure you know this is happening and you're, appropriate for the video. But this just kind of continues to push that video first culture. I do typically enable telephone and computer audio because I often one of the glitches that seems to happen, especially with students, is oftentimes there's something about their mic that's not allowing the audio to come through. And so sometimes they'll call in, so they'll see the screen and they'll be part of the screen in the session that way, but they'll just speak or maybe hear whatever the issue is through their cell phone. So I do enable that just to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible. And then under this advanced options, there's a couple of more features that I would encourage you to set. And these do save as your default. So when you set all these, your next meeting will be these as your default. So if you want to change something for some reason, if you're going from a research meeting to a classroom type session and you want to record versus not record, just make sure you're keeping that in mind, that your settings, whatever you did last, is your default for the next meeting. I do enable to join before host. I'm always late to everything, so this allows people to join before I get there. And it's nice, especially for students, they're able to have, that small talk conversation. Same with a business meeting, I would say. I also, when it's for teaching related, I do record the meeting automatically, because inevitably you'll forget when you start teaching. It's just something that doesn't stay with you when you start to navigate the technology. So I would encourage you, if it's something that you do want to archive for student purposes, and I'll talk a little bit more about that with respect to transcripts in just a moment, this is just a good practice. And students, the more we use Zoom, the more they're going to expect that the meeting is archived. Because if they can't join, they're going to say, can I have the link to the archive? And just a quick note on the LMS integration, because we're not with the new LMS yet, but we are using Zoom. I used Zoom for about a year without the full integration into an LMS. And what you can do is you can just send the link out to the archive. You don't need that integration for it to work and for you to be able to use these assets in your online courses. So I'll show you that in just a moment. And then this alternative host is a new feature. So this is great if you've got TAs, assistants, or you are one of those people. So this was something that didn't exist about a year ago, and I was having trouble setting up online defenses, and I was having my TA do all the logistics, but I had to go in and actually set up the Zoom meetings, which was pretty time-consuming with like 12 students. So this way, if you're working with a graduate student, he or she can set up the meeting, put either themselves or you, however it works out, as the alternative host, and then you're both able to host the meeting and have control, which is, once you start using this, if you're not familiar with this feature, you'll realize why it's so cool. And then I tend to use, and this is just a personal preference, obviously we all have our own behaviors and ways we navigate the technology. I tend, when I'm hosting a meeting, I prefer the desktop. So download the driver and you can do that here. This is a screenshot of the website. And then on the phone, I also have the app. I find it really challenging to try to host a meeting from an app unless I'm on the go and it's not a particularly important meeting. It's just about connecting people. But it's just a little clunkier, for me, interface on the phone than what I find with the computer. However, I would definitely encourage your students to download the app, because I would say probably 9 times out of 10 they're going to join through the app, and it's a nice experience. Okay, now time for the demo. And like I said, I usually do this with students, and they tell me when I'm doing wrong. So, right, this is me, right? This is my smaller meeting. Where's Wendy? I think so. Yes. Okay. Oh, but my screen's not showing.
It's a display issue.
Okay, so this is a much smaller, more tame meeting. Let me get this out of here, though. There we go. And we got the crew from ITS who's offered to help me demonstrate some of this. So the first piece is just how quick and easy it is to join. And I'm assuming, who's joined the meeting through the meeting code? Okay, if you need help joining the meeting, will you raise your hand, and there's staff around, or if you want to join the meeting and you can't quite figure it out, there's staff around who can help you. Let me just make sure I'm with my notes. Okay, so getting familiar with your display. So this is the default of what your meeting looks like. It's tile-based. Obviously, the more people you have, the smaller the tiles start to get, and then more pages will start to create, so there'll be a little dots down here where you can shift, and we'll show you that when we get into the larger meeting. If this ever goes away for you, this bar, which sometimes it does, it hides, you can just hover your mouse over the bottom of your screen and it should pop up. So we've got a bunch of people joining. This is where you can see who's joined down here under Manage Participants. So you can see everybody. So if you're trying to take roll or whatever you're trying to get with to see who's on the session, you can do that through a couple of different clicks down here under Manage Participants. And then I wanted to point out the chat feature, which is really nice if you want to share a link or something, you're talking about something and you're referencing a web link, you can copy it and paste it, or whatever it is that you want to share with the group. And you can also share with individuals. And I believe if you can share with, if you hold down Control, I think you can get multiple people on there. And it'll say share privately down here. And just be careful of how you're sharing your chat. This is a beginner's mistake. So, but it's pretty easy to navigate. This is something, a place people often don't look when they've started a meeting, and they'll have people who are having trouble with audio or something will chat in. So if you notice not everybody's participating, look at your chat. And it's not always elevated, and it'll have like a little notification here that people are trying to get in touch with you. Yes, we've got chat going on. Great. And then what I also should have mentioned is that as host, and this is something I do all the time with students, especially when I'm in a little bit of a time crunch, I just mute people myself, because I don't want to take the time for people to figure out where the mute is. So like, Jeff, I'm going to mute you. Maybe I don't have that enabled in my feature. It's probably something in my settings. But if you have that right in your settings, and I'll go and show you where that is, I could click on any one of these people and mute them if they start to have feedback or if they're typing on their computer or their phone is buzzing or whatever. So I take the liberty of doing that frequently. And then one of the pieces, let's do the green screen. So this was something that I've used on my phone, and I didn't realize that it was a slightly different interface on the computer. So I will... Oh, cool. Okay, so this is, thank you, Wendy. So this is Wendy using her green screen on her phone, which is so cool if you're in an airport or something and you don't want people to see what's going on behind you. Unfortunately, you need a green screen when you're doing this on your computer though. So it's seamless on the phone interface through the app, but I'll show you just where it is. You go under video settings and virtual background. And I've got a couple, it's just gonna be a little, okay. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, it's on my, okay. So this is an image, and I'll show you what this image is in just a second. But if I were giving it a lecture about health outcomes and the built-in natural environment in Haiti, I had an image of a flooded street outside of Port-au-Prince that I could have popped up behind me and been essentially standing there. But you need the green screen when you're trying to do this on your computer. Another plug for green screens when you're thinking about students who are truly at a distance and you want to have that A&M experience for them, I would encourage you to, I'm just going to go here because I picked some of these up. I would encourage you to maybe shy away from iconic buildings because students who haven't come to campus don't necessarily have that connection to the architecture of the campus. But more the culture of the campus is something I would encourage you to display when you're thinking about engaging online students. So this was what I was hoping to have as my green screen. So I could have been standing here in this flooded street. So anyway, let's click out of that. Okay, so and then share screen, which I'm doing automatically, but I'm going to show you where that feature is. So you click share, and this is something that anybody who's on the meeting has the potential to do. So it's wonderful. You can give this control to your students, and they can pop up their screen. They can show you what's not working or what they're having trouble with or what they're excited to show you. So I'm going to share my screen. And so if I had gotten the green screen to work well, what I would have liked to have shown was myself on that street, and then I would have liked to have shown this map of the topography in Haiti, in the region where I was standing, to then maybe excite a discussion about what are some of the drivers of poor health outcomes in that context. So this is just to give you a sense of how flexible you can be with the content and interactive with the content in this medium. So that's sharing screen. And then you also have the ability, too much going on here, to annotate, which is definitely most better. Hold on. I'm going to pull up this map again. And so if I annotate, I can start to show my students, use green, where I was standing. That's not working. I'll use a stamp. So I was standing about, well, anyway. I was standing about right there, and I could start to draw on this map, which is particularly useful for certain disciplines. I'm not very good with the mouse and drawing, but you can see all the options that you have, and then you can also save this, which is nice. So you can, for disciplines such as my own, where we spend a lot of time critiquing and marking up drawings, this feature allows all of that to be saved and then uploaded, downloaded, however it gets shared from that point. So that's sharing screen, whiteboarding, and then the last feature I want to show you is, yes,
Can you have one of your participants do a share
yes,
so we can see what the instructor?
yes. Does anybody have an iPad that they're on? Can you draw? Anybody that's in this meeting on an iPad? Okay, we'll try. Let me stop sharing. So what would happen is I would have to stop sharing. And I've got too much going on here. I'm missing it. On the bar. I see it now. See, this is why you need students. Okay, somebody else take control. Jennifer, why don't you go for it? So she's got something up where she can type and she could maybe show her notes or she could draw something. She has a lot of flexibility. And I've had students share videos that they've produced or that they've wanted to use to illustrate something, so it's pretty dynamic in what you can share. It's essentially anything that's there on your desktop. Okay, Jennifer, you want to stop sharing? Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so now my very favorite feature, which is the breakout rooms, and this is why I was a little worried to do this with the multiple people in this session. So you can see, let me go back. You can click breakout rooms, which is on everybody's option, and you can do this manually or automatically. I would say if you just have a small group, I would say manually. I do like to socially engineer my groups with my students to make sure they're interdisciplinary. But you do this in real time. And so I want to assign the 10 participants into, let's say, 3 rooms. And I'm going to do it manually. So I have to assign, and then they go away as I click to the next room, which is very cool. And then I open all rooms, but I can set this to 4 minutes. And what's really cool is when that time is done, the rooms dissolve. So all these people will come back into the main room. And
Question about that.
yes,
Is there, you set a timer
Mhm.
and say more time,
I
go in and manually change it?
yes, I think I can. I say that. I'll have to get back to you on that. I think you can. Yes.
Can you jump randomly into whatever room you want to?
So yes, I can, or they can. So I can broadcast to them all this way. So I can share something, or if I forgot something, or if one group asked me a question when they've pulled me in, I can share it to the group. Or I can join this room. And I can move them. Here's the feature where I can move them to different rooms. So I can join this room, for instance, right now, and then I'm in with them. And they can ask me questions, and Jennifer's asking for help.
So what Jennifer just tried for us is a really neat option that we found the other day, that if a group is together and they're just completely lost, I really need the instructor, I really need to ask for help. There's a button for that participant that says ask for help. And if you'll notice that Jocelyn received a pop-up that says join this room because someone specifically asked for help. So not only can you bounce between the rooms, but the students can ask you to come into that breakout room.
And so they're not isolated in these rooms until the time expires, which is really neat. And then I can leave this breakout room. And it looks like there was somebody I didn't put in a breakout room. I apologize, Jordan. Yes.
What is being recorded as you've gone through the different sharings and then the breakout rooms? If I'm doing a recording, what do I get?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to show you those options in just a second so you can choose. You can stop the recording or you can record each session, and I'll show you where that option is. So anything else with the breakout room before I move on to a few more features? Yeah.
Who has been controlling whether we see you or the screen on our devices? Are you controlling that, or?
Martin in the back has been controlling that with our AV.
Okay, so that's not something that we do as professors of whether they're seeing us through the webcam or whether they're seeing our computer screen?
If you share the screen, you're
Yep.
gonna see the screen. If you're talking and you're not sharing the screen,
You
they're gonna
see you. Yeah.
turn that feature off.
Yeah. So they'll only see your screen if you're sharing the screen.
My question is about substitution for physical removal of rooms. In our cases, we often use group physical meetings, and then there's an option for people to step out. I'm wondering what the substitution on Zoom is appropriate for that, because when you
Yep.
attempt to mute, or it doesn't necessarily work.
So you have people in one room, in one group, like the session,
Right.
and you want to put them in another place.
Self-select certain
Yes.
people online who are then muted and excluded
Excluded from the room.
and
Yes.
zoomed again.
Yes.
So how can that happen?
Same way, you can just assign them to a breakout room. So, yes,
And they won't be able to hear you.
correct. Yes, you can pull them back in. And that's a great feature for like online defenses if you want to have a conversation without the student in the room. And there's also a waiting room feature, so you can allow people to not join before you're ready for them to join.
And the notification once the time lapses, does that show up?
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I think there's a 2-minute warning.
You said waiting room?
Yes, that's a separate feature from the breakout rooms, and that's in your setup, your meeting setup.
Thank you.
Waiting rooms are a really great opportunity for office hours. If you have someone come into a waiting room and you need to talk to some students about grades, you can just pull one person into your room to talk about grades and leave the others in the waiting room so you're not FERPA violations or anything like that.
Thank you. So I'm just going to show now a few more slides that get to a few more of these features because I think they're better. So, yep, the breakout room is closed. So I'm just going to go here. Okay. Okay, so this is where in your account settings, this is where you can do some of that, the specificity for the recording. And I would encourage you to, Zoom has great video tutorials. If you're gonna make use of these features, I would encourage you to watch, they're like 2 minutes so that you understand the nuances. I couldn't cover them all today in the ways that you might want to apply them. But there's under the account settings, there's a cloud recording. So this is just your general account settings, either in the desktop or the desktop driver, or you can also access this by logging in online at zoom.us, that's what you're seeing is this interface. And you can see I don't have a profile set up, but it would say my name if I did. So under account settings, this is where you can do some of that. I would highly encourage you, if you're going to make use of the recording and share that as an asset, and you can record either as up to a cloud recording or as a file that you download. I would encourage whichever works best for how you want to use it, so to think through that. But if you do the timestamp to the recording, then you can also generate a transcript. And what students will do with this, if they couldn't attend the session, is if you're talking about an assignment that's due and the student emails you and said they couldn't come to the session, can you send them the archived materials? You can say yes, and I talked about the assignment that's due next class about 20 minutes into the class. Or they can just search the transcript for assignment and it'll pop up, and then as they typically do. They'll then go to the recording, play it, maybe put it on double time, and hear what you had to say, and maybe not listen to the rest of what you said. So this is a really nice feature that if students understand it, I think they'll make great use of it. But it's important that your settings are reflective of how you want them to use it. And these can all be explored through your account settings and changed meeting by meeting. So however you set it up for one doesn't necessarily mean it needs to apply to all your meetings. And then with that, the Zoom help webpage is particularly helpful. This is just a screen grab of their popular topics. And you can see they've got all kinds of resources nested within these thumbnails that are really useful. They're short, they're meant to be bite-sized and accessible to people who are in a hurry and just needing to know how to use the technology. And also, if you just Google like whatever you need to know about Zoom, usually the exact resource will pop up. And I should say also on our Zoom splash page, most of our resources are pointing to this page. So we didn't really create any additional resources because these were so robust.
You mentioned the transcript. Does it automatically generate after the recording has stopped?
Yeah, well, you have to
There's a
setting.
to check it.
Yes.
And is there a place to go in and edit the transcript?
Yes, you can download them and you can edit them, and certainly.
Download it and edit it.
Mhm.
Do you know what the percent accuracy is on the transcript?
I don't, but I could find out for you. I think it is. That's something that I need to ask our Zoom rep about. If I don't have the answer for that. Do you, Wendy, Jennifer?
We would have
Okay.
third-party software, so we would have to get a contract with another software.
Okay.
To read it within Zoom, just like you would MediaSite or any other company.
So I'm going to talk about an opportunity for Zoom. They're coming next week, and so I know our rep is going to talk about that. I'll mention that in just a second. And this is one of the topics that he wants to discuss with us, so we understand what the possibilities are and how we move forward in this direction if it makes sense. Yeah.
What's the retention period for the cloud saves?
Sorry, didn't hear that.
What is the retention period for the cloud saves of your recordings?
Kyle. Okay.
Kyle says there is no retention. Nothing's predefined as of now.
Are the cloud saves encrypted, purpose secure?
Kyle.
The question was, are the cloud saves FERPA secure? Encrypted.
They're not encrypted at rest, but you're looking at, if you encrypt the video itself, the video feed, which you have the option to do, then yes, it is by default encrypted.
Okay, I just have two more quick slides, and this is just to let you know we have several opportunities next week where our Zoom partner will be on campus at several events. First, on May 1st at Help Desk Central from 12 to 4. We're partnering with the staff at Help Desk Central, and there'll be food and swag provided by Zoom. And this is really for students. We want to make sure students get set up. So I would encourage you to drive your students to that event. It'll be a lot of fun, and they can get their questions answered and see how they can start using it for their individual needs as we start using it on the teaching and research side. And then we'll do a similar pop-up at TTLC at the Hotel and Conference Center on May 5th from May 2nd, from 8 to noon. Same Zoom rep, it's going to be staffed by some student workers from Help Desk Central, so they're getting some real-time, like on-the-fly learning about Zoom. And then also myself and the Zoom rep will do something similar, but a little more dynamic and more forward-focusing on the new and next tools for Zoom integrated into higher ed applications, also at TTLC on May 2nd. So all of those were listed in the email that was sent out, and feel free to let us know, the ITS staff, if you want more information on that. The event on May 1st, the pop-up is being advertised through Division of IT's social media accounts, so that's the easiest way to get information.
I have two questions. So the first one is, I'm here. The first one is, it's limited to 100 participants. Is there any way we could extend that college-wise? And the second one is, Zoom has apps, and then we need to request permission to install the apps on our end.
Kyle has an answer to
Okay, first question. I worked with the Zoom rep. We are getting 200 participants. It's being bumped up. That's a temporary because the long term for Zoom is they're going to 300. They're going to default that to everyone to have 300 participants. 200 participants, we should have that by next week. We just have to move people into those accounts. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we'll have it ready well before fall. As far as the apps, we're still discussing that because, yes, you're right. Every time you request it, it actually comes to me, and then I just say yes. We're discussing that. Yeah, it's a lot of learning curve here on this one, but that's Dr. Widmer and I will talk about that later as far as what she'd like to do with that.
Thank you for waiting for me.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions.
Okay.
One is on installation with external attendees who do not have it or are not associated with us. I'm of the understanding that you have to install the software in order to join the group.
No, you actually don't. If you send them that join URL, anyone can join that.
Okay, great. Password, in the advanced options, setting up passwords. I've noticed that if I select that, it generates 2 passwords. How can you differentiate between the 2 passwords? What's the workaround for that?
Have you experienced that?
In what context? Advanced where?
Under the advanced options with the preset meeting, when you're scheduling a meeting, if there was a 3-digit password that jumped up and then another one, and so we had some of our invitees curious about which password to use. And on the other side of it, as an attendee to prior meetings, I've had an issue with that, and it actually blocks you out. So I'm curious about that.
We can look into it. I'm not aware of that, but one is probably for hosts, one is probably for attendees, but we can look into that.
Okay. A third question and last for now is the software updates. Another experience I've had is challenges with the software needing to be generated, and it will delay a meeting. Are those happening regularly? I know that they're on a cycle for different users for Zoom right now.
Zoom does put out regular updates. Now, that could also affect your local IT staff because depending upon the policies they have, if they're allowing it to upgrade, periodically, or is it only when it's launched? If they're setting up to where it's only when it's launched, then that's something that unfortunately it's a local user setting. If you have control of that, then I would actually go in and allow that to just be updated regularly. In other words, the Zoom is constantly running in the background.
Right. Okay, thanks.
So I do have some quick feedback. When I was on my phone, part of the context that was being shared was cut off, and then also the context was fuzzy. So when everything was being shared, the actual wording on it was a little fuzzy. We use it more for like a webinar, and I did see the option there. I know you can mute everybody upon entry and also turn off their video. Do they have the option of turning it on?
Under the regular session or a webinar session?
Webinar.
Webinar, I'm not familiar with the webinar interface.
Webinar, but on the regular session, if you as the host set it up to where they're muted when they come in. They probably do have the option to unmute.
They do, yeah.
They do.
And we have an answer about the fuzziness. There's a couple of things that are happening right now because we've got a lot of AV happening in the room and we've got so many users. We wanted to make it as quick as possible without any lag. And so from what I understand, the bandwidth, that sort of thing, it all just really affects it. And then the other thing is that Dr. Widmer was actually showing some screenshots in a PowerPoint presentation. And so
a mess on my
that
screen.
creates the fuzziness that you're seeing. Had she had just shown her screen and shared the screen, it would have been a lot more clear. But she took a screenshot and then put it in a PowerPoint and then shared the screen.
Yeah.
And so that's something, that's one of those things like she was talking about, you need to play with it a little bit. That's one of those things that you would learn once you play with it.
Thank you, Wendy.
So you were mentioning how there's like so many users right now that that's why it's fuzzy, so like the speed is okay. So does that mean like even if it gets bumped up for like 300 users, does that mean that maybe if we have 300 people, it won't work that well?
So we are all currently on the same access point. And so that's having an effect on the bandwidth as well.
questions?
Will this be on all ITS or computers at lecterns at the university?
Why don't you talk? Kyle's going to talk some about Zoom rooms.
So Zoom rooms are going to be in IMS managed classrooms that have AV capability. They will actually have Zoom rooms. If there's no AV capability, then it won't be on the machine because there's no cameras. You would be basically just setting up with video or with audio only. So, but anything that is IMS managed, that is the key. If it's not managed by IMS, then the colleges or departments are responsible for purchasing the Zoom room licenses on their own. I'm gonna look at Regina really, really intently. How do they know?
It'll be on our webpage.
Okay.
And while I'm walking back this way, I'm going to ask a follow-up question for you. Are these Zoom, or is Zoom going to be downloaded in Student Computing Center, student accessible public computers? I heard a yes on this direction. Okay, great. Zoom will be on every one of the machines that they manage. 5,252 different computers here on campus. Thank you so much.
I had two questions. In thinking about how I would use this with an online class, I would love to have students be able to engage with one another without me and on their own time. Do I have to set up, you have to talk to one another Thursday at 3 o'clock, or can I say, you need to get with your Zoom group or whatever it's called sometime between Monday at 8 and Wednesday at 5, and you all need to be connected for 1 hour? Does that make sense?
Yes, the latter is
Okay.
the hope. One of the markers of success that I've seen with my students is it went from me sending them a Zoom link to when they needed me, they sent me a Zoom link. And they knew that's how they were going to find me.
So would they send, like, let's say, okay, you're a group of 3 in this online course, you need to collaborate via Zoom. Do I as the professor need to be involved in that, or they can totally set it up amongst themselves?
They can set it up. They have the same pro license that we all have, and just careful directions and that kind of thing, and then they can start sharing those links through GroupMe or however they're going to collaborate and communicate with each other. But this is all something all students have the capability to set up a Zoom session among themselves.
And they don't actually need a webcam as long as they have a laptop with the little
Yes, yeah, or a smartphone.
Okay.
But they'll probably use a smartphone more than a laptop.
I have a question over here.
Hi, I had a question regarding the Zoom rooms. How are they going to be scheduled?
So he's saying that in the rooms that have been set up by IMS with Zoom, how are they going to be scheduled?
If it's scheduled for you to have a session in there and you want to use it, it'll be available. That's something they're going to have to work out as far as registrar and everything else.
What's the difference between a Zoom room and just using the Zoom individual?
So a Zoom room, if we were set up as a Zoom room in here, it would actually have its own number. You could walk in. One of the greatest benefits of it, meeting side, is that if I'm on my phone and I'm walking and I need to join a meeting and I know there's people with me, I could just go into a room and I can transfer to that Zoom room, and the Zoom room would be the participant and all of us in it. So there's some other benefits of the Zoom rooms, but that's basically what it is. It's just, you don't have to launch Zoom as yourself and get it started. It's automatic. It can be integrated with Exchange, talking about scheduling and other things, and you can just say it starts up. Very similar to what TTVN does right now, as far as you walk in, if it's set up with TTVN, it's just starting. Everything's just running, and it's available.
What are the legalities of recording the video and then distributing it if it has the images of the students?
Anybody from legal?
You don't want to take a crack at that?
Let's make sure this man has a microphone.
I'm not a lawyer. But it's the truth. So substantially, it's no different now than if somebody's taking a video while you're in class, or you're in class with a group of people. Unless you're identifying the individual and it's a group of individuals, that's when you have to have a FERPA sign-off for each individual participant that's in a picture. But if right now somebody takes a picture, and this is all students, technically that is just a meeting like you would have in your classroom. The only difference here is it's in a virtual environment as opposed to in class in person. That's what the registrar has said here at Texas A&M historically.
Make sure you don't include their names on those images.
There's nothing that says you can't. There's nothing preventing you from doing it now with a place card in your classroom in front of every student. How is it any different than doing that today? The difference being it's in the cloud. We have no policy that says you can't do that. And I'm pretty sure somebody already has.
So what I would like to do is make sure I've properly thanked everybody who has had their hands in today's event and also the launch of Zoom as a group, and listed them here. First and foremost, ITS for the wonderful lunch and getting everybody together and making sure that all of the ins and outs of connecting into this Zoom session while we showcase the technology works seamlessly. The Division of IT for all of their help in launching Zoom, in marketing the launch of Zoom, and then continued help with Help Desk Central and the events for next week. Provost IT, Kyle and Juan, and others who provided the answers to the tougher questions today. The Provost Communications Office, who I don't think is here today, but they've done a really wonderful job of making sure that the imagery and the communications syncs with the message of the Provost Office. And of course, Zoom, who will be with us next week and is really excited that we're part of their institutions who are launching Zoom in a big way across campus. So with that, what I'd hope that you'll do is take the next 15 or so minutes while you've got so much help and support here and try out a Zoom meeting or try out some of the features, and we can help you if you like. And if not, you want to try it out on your own and come to some of the pop-ups next week, we'd love to help you out. Or hear how you're using it and how it's really working for you. I'd love to hear the success stories. Thank you.
Real quick, go ahead. Real quick, the green screen, the problem that we had earlier, on the computers, it's an issue. There is it's a virtual green screen app that you can get through Microsoft, through Apple, through those others. We haven't actually tested it, but that's the direction we're going instead of actually having to buy a physical green screen, which you can do, but we're looking at the virtual ones.
I was just going to say I've used most of the different video conferencing apps that are out there, and I think Zoom is probably one of the most user-friendly ones of them. So it's definitely worth playing with.
Thank you.
Just like Dr. Widmer says, we have plenty of ITSers still walking around the room, so please invite each other to some Zoom rooms, invite each other to play, and work together.